So our speaker tonight is Jano Banks. Jano is awesome. I've had the privilege of hanging out with him at Shasta Angels meetings and a couple of other times, and he is just an utter gem. Jano has a very impressive resume from working at Apple from 1988 to 97, so that was a pretty pivotal time. Co-inventor of HDMI. He has numerous patents to his name, including, correct me if I'm wrong, but the microphones in remotes was your idea, correct? You know, casual, just a one head nod, like, yes, I did that. So he's a part of the Angel Group. He's had his own startup, raised millions for that, all these amazing things. So anyway, he has quite the resume here, and thank you for joining us. We'll just dive into stuff. So, Jano, what inspired you to pursue a career in tech?
The funny thing is, I was raised by two journalists and a very low-tech home, but I grew up in Marin County, North County of the Bay Area, and my best friend's dad was an engineer. And so we were kids who did a bunch of projects, go-karts, things like that. And his dad built a heat kit computer when we were 11 years old. And I don't know if anybody knows anything about heat kits. Back in the day, this is things we could buy and solder ourselves. And we were a bunch of nerdy kids who didn't even know what nerd was. And we would get these heat kits and do that. His dad built an entire computer. This was prior to the Apple One even. And, like the Altair was out there, but a heat kit could be made. And his dad made that. And we programmed computers at 11 years old and thought it was just the thing to do. The funny thing is I raised by journalists. So my sister, as youngest, my sister once asked me, she was in college, and said, hey, what are you going to apply to for your major in college? And I said, well, we're all journalists. And I was editor of the school newspaper, as you would be to journalist parents.
I think that's a requirement.
Yeah, and so I thought, I guess I'll major in journalism like everyone else. And she said, you should be an engineer. And I said, what's that? and literally that terrible thing, you think of the train engineer, that's all I knew.
Do you really want to go that far away?
Seemed like a good job, but really I didn't even know what engineering was. And she said, well, it's that stuff you do. You program these computers, you build these motorized go-karts, you do all this stuff, which, they didn't know what nerd was back then. And I said, you can study that in college? And she goes, yeah, and, you can get a job and you get paid really well. I go, they pay me to do this? And literally, that was it. I'm like, well, gosh, I'll apply for engineering. And that's how it came about. And then in college, I went to Stanford and electrical engineering, and then got my job at Apple out of college and started designing Macintoshes, and the rest all that.
That's awesome. So what was it like? Well, I guess here. So how did kind of like your early work experience, how do you feel like that determined your trajectory for your career? Like where...
I am so thankful for the time that my career spanned, 35 years from 88 till 2023. About a year ago, almost a year ago today, I retired.
Was it like a year ago today?
Yeah, well, like 20th.
That's a celebration.
It is a celebration.
Dude.
Yeah. I survived a year of being retired. It's ridiculous.
Your wife survived it too.
My wife
Well,
the Saints, that's for sure. Boy, I'm in a house. You thought the pandemic was hard. What if you're tired? Oh my gosh, honey, what are you doing right now?
That'd be wonderful. She's doing it. Anyways, back to
Yeah. So, what was the question?
Yeah, it was. How did your early work experience shape kind of the trajectory?
So my fortunate time in the computer industry was just amazing. Being there in the 80s, I was in college when the Macintosh came out, and I was at Stanford, the homebrew computer group, where they showed it. I wasn't there then, but I got there in 83, so in 84 when the Mac came out was, just amazing. And then I studied computer architecture because I thought, oh my gosh, what is this thing? And so my timing was, just so fortunate. And then literally getting the job at Apple, I mean, it was a dream to get a job working at Apple back then. Back then, Apple was a small underdog company, and most of you might not realize that. But it really was at the time. And even before the Mac came out, but then they really had a terrible, troublesome time. Steve Jobs was fired, ousted. And so when I got there at 88, the Mac 2 had come out and given them a little bit of a boost in business. But really it was, really trying to compete with IBM, Microsoft, and so on. And it wasn't clear at all that Apple would make it. So what affected my career really was just that I was in, fortunately, the right place, the right time. And Apple being a young underdog company, I was given opportunities that they shouldn't have given me. I mean, my dad being the journalist, he'd ask me, he'd say, "Do you know how to do that stuff?" I said, "Well, Dad, I went to Stanford and I studied electrical engineering, and, we're actually, breakthrough of some of these things in software that they don't even have in industry yet. So yeah, I do kind of know what to do." And he goes, "Do they let you do it?" And I said, "It's amazing they do. And I'm 22 years old. And you know what? If I screw up, it's their fault.
Amazing.
They should not allow me to do this stuff." I mean, it was this weird thing. I swear it was.
Did you say what you were doing?
Oh, yeah. Now that it's 20 years older and I'm retired and I've had 2 stints at Apple, yes, I'll tell a few things. I guess it's on film, so, maybe the lawyer from Apple will kill me about something from 1988.
We'll bleep it out, don't worry.
Okay, maybe I'll keep it very, very generic. But no, I designed Macs for many years. The 68040 Macs were the things that I did. That was a breakthrough back then. One of the last 68,000 base microprocessor computers. And then I did computers based on the PowerPC. It was a switch to RISC. I just luckily had so many opportunities. The other thing that was amazing at the time is when I entered, we still designed computers with discrete parts. And so that circuit board for the Quadra 700, that was the first computer. I was the lead engineer on it, like 24. And it was discrete parts, a few integrated chips, but not many. And then the next thing we needed to do was integrate them into chips. And again, right place, right time. Who would do that but the designers of the systems like myself? So I learned how to do chip design. And I was mentored by one of the greatest computer architects in the history of computers, which none of you know. His name is Bill Saperstein, and I just got him archived at the Computer History Museum. He's 73 years old. Full circle, he was my mentor when I was 23 years old at Apple. He taught me how to design chips. Finally, at NES, the end of my career, I was his boss. He was 73 years old, and he had come out of retirement just to teach engineers. And so he worked for me. He was still my boss.
Was that at Google then?
It was at Google.
Came out? Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And anyway, I got him archived, literally video archived at the Computer History Museum. Please go watch it. It's fascinating. His career was from 73 until 2023 year. And really a dissertation you should all watch.
And I'll say that's something that we can totally do. As if you guys wrote your name on the sign-up form or your name and your email, that's something that we can totally email out to you guys if you're interested in watching that. So, you can't talk about Apple without talking about Steve Jobs. So he came, you stopped working at Apple in 97. He came back in 96. What was that like having him come back? Just the morale, the ingenuity, inventiveness of Apple. Did you see any changes, or was it kind of business as usual?
It was a very interesting time, and as you noted there, we overlapped for just a little bit. I often say he was there in the Apple odds, and I was there the Apple evens. He was Apple 1 and 3, I was there 2 and 4. And so didn't overlap much. In 96, 97, we did overlap a little because Apple acquired his company Next. Literally to bring the operating system into Apple, needed a new operating system. Long story short, I used to say, the building was just barely big enough for the two of our egos added together. And so one of us had to go, and I guess it was me.
Well, they already made him go once, so they're like, we can't have
Well,
him go
he
a
just got
second
back,
time.
and the funny thing was, I won't tell the whole story because it takes too long, but when I left in 97, Apple was almost dead. You could read the history books. Apple in 97, the Time magazine said, cover of it was Apple RIP, rest in peace, had a tombstone. And literally Apple was a couple of barely made payroll in 97. I left in June. Everybody and their brother was going to this thing called the internet. Startups, it was super hot. And so I too, wanted to taste the nectar, and I went to a startup, left Apple. When I was leading Apple, I'd been there 9.5 years, and I'd been to a fair number of things and had some pretty good successes. And so they tried to talk me out of leading. And John Rubenstein was the head of hardware. He's from Next. That was one of the big conditions. Long story short, so he's trying to talk me out of leading, and he, like Steve Jobs, a real asshole. Now, Steve Jobs, brilliant. I read all the books about him. I wished I had actually worked for him, and almost a masochistic wish, to see if I could survive. That literally, Rubenstein was just an asshole. Sorry, John, if he'd watch it. Successful. Okay, I can't make this any better. All right, so he started talking out of it, and I'm too full of myself, 20, 30 something years old. And I finally just get annoyed. I said, you know what? I'm just out of here. There's nothing you can say to keep me here. He insulted the new company I was going to, the CEO of that company. He said he was a total loser. And I'm like, you're not appealing to me. So I finally go, I'm leaving. I'm getting up. I'm going right now. And he says, can I have Steve Jobs call you at home? And I said, no, that will not be
When I said yes, I'll say no to him. What?
She's got to get to a question, I think, that says, is there anything you regret in your career?
Don't judge that now.
Yes, I regret not having Steve Jobs call me at home. However, I think the reason I said, no, that won't be necessary, is because I was pretty sure he'd talk me into staying. And I needed to go. I needed to go to startups, go do that thing in my career. Did that for 16 years. Ran my own startup for a while. I needed to do that. Now, financially, a total disaster. If I had stayed, you all see what happened to Apple, and I was one of the guys that probably would have gotten some good stock. But who cares? I'm here today speaking in Reading. It all worked out great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So are there any specific key takeaways from your time at Apple that really stuck out in your mind as either learning experiences or what have you?
Yeah, the two stints at Apple, and the first one, in 88 to 97, was first girlfriend. Amazing experience to be there. Was able to do all these things they shouldn't have let me do. Learned so many things. It was incredible growth. Set me so that I could then go and do other things in startups. I think prepared me for it. Coming back was actually kind of interesting. In 2013, I came back, and I actually said when I left to myself, I said, I'm only, I think I'd like to come back to Apple someday, but it'll be as a director. And is that what happened? Turns out that put up it. Yeah, so I was director of Apple TV was how I got hired back.
That's awesome. So that's just impressive as it is, with the Apple stuff, but there's more. So, kind of HDMI. What's the backstory?
So, left Apple in 97, went to a startup called DVDO, which was founded by 7 of my buddies at Apple. Now, I actually did a first startup, though, called Navio before that. That was the startup the Nectar, It was a Navio-based, it was called Navio. It was a Netscape spin-out company. A lot of you don't even know who Netscape probably is, but Netscape was the internet, was the first browser. Mark Andreessen founded Next. He's a state investor now. Okay, so they founded that startup Navio to do a web TV competitor. Anybody heard of web TV? Web TV, they put email on the TV. And Steve Perlman from Apple founded that company. Anyway, so NetSuite wanted to do a competitor to web TV, and they founded Navio. I went there, and I was the one hardware person.
Oh, God.
And
Like it all rested on you?
yes, and so like we need this box that does the computers on a TV, and we're a bunch of software people. We think it's easy.
It's still hardware. People just go do that. You can do that
Those
right
of you
next
who
week.
are software people who think hardware is easy, shame on you. Hardware is hard.
Literally in the name. Like,
Anyway, the big mistake I made was thinking I was capable of being a single hardware person to create a whole product. Disaster. I left after 5 months and went to this company, DVDO. We did well. We did a single chip deinterlacer. Deinterlacer is from interlace to progressive scan conversion. You guys don't probably even know what that is. But your HD TV today, 720p, 1080p, it used to be 480i interlace. And that was original television. Anyway, we did that. We got acquired by a company called Silicon Image. Silicon Image acquired us in 2000, the height of the first internet boom. And I thought, this is what, I left Apple, went to a first startup, disaster, went to the second one. We made it. We got acquired. I was employee number 7, just a regular engineer, and I was a millionaire on paper that day. And I'm like, all right, I nailed it. Well,
How many hardware people this time at least?
sorry. Oh, yes, this was a real company.
Okay.
A real hardware company. They were.
It was like 3, right?
No.
Yeah, okay.
It was a semiconductor company. They had gone public, and on a technology called Panel Link, which was the predecessor to HDMI. Anyway, a long story shorter. We went there, and it looked like everything was gravy. And but this was March of 2000. Have you guys studied the history of the industry? You probably heard of 2008, 2009. But March of 2000 was the peak of the first internet boom, and literally boom right after that. We were acquired in March. The stock had just split. It was at 128, it was 64 the day we got the deal. By the time we got our shares as employees, it takes 3 months to get to, it was down to 48. And we're like, little correction, don't worry about
I'm
it.
back.
Fine.
So now I'm worth 800,000. That's okay. It's going to get back up to 2 million, blah, blah, blah. And so by the time I finally sold some shares, because my Pinto, my Ford Pinto, broke down. And I had to buy
All
a car.
stellar shares. Yeah.
Yes. It was $7.50. But I bought an Avalon. Oh my gosh, a Toyota Avalon, not a Corolla. Okay. By the time the bottom finally bottomed out, $1.50. And I wished I'd sold more at $7.50. So, come back to earth, realize that you missed the boat, a lot of swallowing of pride, a lot of coulda, shoulda, woulda, but my wife and I both agree the best thing that ever happened, we became real humans again. And realize that life is about hard work, and something maybe will work out for you. And literally, Steve Jobs, the journey is the reward. It really is about how you go about it. That's how you get your joy. And sometimes things work out, and they work out pretty well.
So HDMI.
HDMI.
Yeah,
Sorry.
nope, you're good. That was great. That took
Okay,
care of
well,
like
that's
two other
that
questions.
tells you how I got there.
Yeah.
So at that point, when the stock went to $1.50, the founders of DVDO, we were doing video processing. They had to lay off a bunch of people and cut a bunch of projects. So they cut all of our projects. And so the founders were really pissed off. And they'd stay in a huff, left the company. Well, the rest of us employees who were doing the work, if you will, we needed a job. And we were just happy to be employed. And literally what happened was I was actually on vacation, just happened to be, when this all came down and the founders quit. I get back on Monday and the VP of engineering calls me into his office and he says, "Did you hear the founders quit?" I said, "Yeah, I've heard something about what's that?" You know, he goes, "Are you leaving too?" And I'm like, leverage. Well, there was this project called DMI in the company, and I was working on a different one. And DMI, to me, was the thing. It became HDMI. Digital Multimedia Interface, it was called. DVI, Digital Video Interface, was the predecessor, DMI. I wanted that project. So I said to the VP, I said, "Tell you what, you take us DVDOers, the rest of us left, give us DMI, we'll all stay." Nice. And he goes, "I can't take that project away from them." And I said, "Are you the VP?" He said, "You can make a choice. You know we're the better engineers." I was, you know.
Learned that from Steve Jobs, you know.
Yeah. I probably got some of the Kool-Aid there. Anyway, he did. He took the other engineers off that project and put us on DMI. And then 4 of us from DVDO became the key co-inventors. It's a co-invention. You never do anything by yourself. And but I was the lead engineer and then manager of the group as we went through 2.5 generations. And we just I like to say being in the right place at the right time is what is just happy and lucky for all of us. And being in the wrong place at the wrong time is usually what happens. You heard that many different times in my career before that. And so that time, right place, right time. And literally was that the industry needed Japan Inc. was the head of, everything with Sony, Matsushita, which is Panasonic, Toshiba, Hitachi. Those 4 companies wanted a digital interface for digital displays. They knew digital displays were coming, and you couldn't do it with analog and get good quality on the digital displays. You go analog to digital, digital to analog. It's just dumb. You can just say digital the whole way. Computers digital, screens digital, but we needed a wire that could go digital as well. And so that was the impetus. And then David Lee, the founder of Silicon Image, saw it, a good visionary. And he had one of the engineers do a prototype of DMI. I just fell over when I saw it. I got to be on that project. We ended up doing it much differently than what that prototype was. That prototype wasn't scalable. And so we designed it to be fully scalable. What was amazing was we did this in 2002 is when it was introduced, and designed it all and made the chips and got them up there on time remarkably. And who would know that 20 some years later, it's still the thing. I mean, we did design it with the future in mind. We really did. But man, I'm blown away.
And we got like 3 of them back here alone, so.
It's gone through iterations, generations of improvements, but it is always backward compatible, which is something that we wrote in the spec and designed in. And literally, I was a big part of it. I was, but I'm still blown away that it's still the standard out there and still doing, everything that we'd like it.
So how long did it take you guys to essentially go from the prototyping stage to market?
Yeah, so we got acquired in March of 2000. By 2001 is when the bottom dropped out. That's when we got the project. So 2001, I'd say March until 2002, December, I think it was it was introduced. I mean, it was only like a year and something.
Like what?
It was incredible, and literally, we never thought we'd be able to do that time when we were doing the assessment of the schedule. It was going to be about 9 months later, and bless his heart, the VP of marketing told us it had to be this day. And we said, well, gee, for us to do that, we'd have to do this. He said, come back to me with the plan and how much it costs and what you need. And so we did, and we just thought, we'll never do it. He said, you got it all, delivered on time. I'm like, oh my gosh. And one of the things I'm most proud of, we delivered it 3 days early.
Hey.
Where'd the stock go? So their stock went crazy and did really well. A lot of people ask me, because HDMI actually had a royalty too. One of the only things in the history of computers that got a royalty, and that's how Silicon Image and other companies, the ones about it, made tons of it. It's been billions of units now, and they still get a royalty. Yeah. But people ask me, they said, do you get any of it? I said, 0. But the nice thing,
The pride of knowing
well,
that you.
here's the nice thing. People ask you always, I've got 25 some patents, but they're all owned by all the companies that I worked for. It costs a lot of money to pay lawyers to get patents, so that's nice that they do that. But you do get your name on the patent. I get to tell you I'm the co-inventor of HDMI at 25 patents to my name. The most important thing to me when my kids were little is they were 5 or 6, 8 years old. I said, have you ever heard of Thomas Edison? Oh, yeah. Yeah, he invented the light bulb. I said, do you know where that invention is stored? The U.S. Patent Office. And you can go on the internet and go look it up and see Thomas Edison and see his light bulb patent. And you know what? You can also see Daddy up there. And then for the first time ever, my kids were impressed with me.
So that's the secret.
That was worth whatever royalties I could have ever gotten.
Awesome. Now, was there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was one time when I heard you talking about the HDMI story, was there a trip to Japan where things got a little dicey, maybe?
Yeah.
You want to go into that or no?
Thanks. Thanks
We
for the
don't
promise.
have to.
So, nothing comes easy, and as for a bit of fate and God's grace, this never would have happened. I guess it was late 2002, maybe September or so, or maybe anyway, sometime in that, there was a shootout in Japan for what the technology was going to be for this digital interface. They had gone worldwide because they could, and they said throughout the gauntlet, who could make this digital interface? They knew Silicon Image had good technology for it, and they were one of the candidates. But the other two candidates were Intel, and then and they were with another startup called Genesis, and then the other one was Panasonic. I mean, household names, right? So it was little Silicon Image against Intel and this other startup, Genesis, and Panasonic, the shootout. So whoever won this shootout, that was going to be the technology that would be the basis for this digital interface for the world. And so no pressure. And the shootout, literally, we had to show a working prototype of digital television going over a cable with no errors. Many of you might not realize that digital interface is actually analog. Everything's analog at the end of the day, and digital serial links actually have what's called bit errors. Errors occur, and much of the networking that you do, Ethernet and all kinds of wireless, there's all kind of error correction because there's errors all over the place. But then there's all this error correction coding and things like that they do, and other kind of techniques to make it so by the time it gets to your computer, no errors. Well, so we had that problem too on this digital interface trying to go so fast. we literally had the prototype. It was in FPGAs and software that we were doing, and we literally had 2 of them in the world. And we were needing to get this demo to Japan and have it working for the shootout. Well, 4 days before the event, the guy who wrote the spec, Paul Tenenwolf is his name, he had to get on the plane with one of the prototypes and go to Japan because he had to transport it there, set it up, make sure it worked, and be ready for the shootout. He left with it not working. And the great thing was, FPGAs, if you ever dealt with them, literally it's a little bit file with the bits that make the FPGA be what it is. So we said, no problem. You go to Japan, we'll work on the other one. By the time you get there, we'll have it all fixed, and we'll email you the little bit file, 64K.
Fine, fine.
We were confident. Can you imagine what Paul felt like?
My I know how the story ends, and I'm like,
Well, you all know how the story ends. But anyway, what happened was we literally didn't have it working. And he gets on the plane, and he gets it. And he's there, and he goes, okay, you got the new code? It still wasn't working 2 days later. So then, literally, the founder of Silicon Image, David Lee, he's the favorite son of Korea. He's from Korea, and one of the key lead engineer managers there on the theory of serial links and bit errors, a guy named Sung Ho Kwon. They had gone to high school together. They were long buddies. Literally, David Lee calls Sung Ho and says, Sung Ho, this whole company depends on this. Our whole future. All these Korean engineers are going to have to go back to Korea. You know, you got to do something. And myself and my best buddy, Al Scalisi, we were from DDO. We were with Sung Ho working on this. So we were the chip designers, and Sung Ho was the brains behind the serial link to try to make it work. So literally, he says, Sung Ho, you have to invent something by tomorrow. And so literally, I go by, and we still didn't have it working. It's like 5 o'clock. And so I said, Sung Ho, what did David say? He said, I'd have to invent something by tomorrow. And I said, okay, we're going to go home, get some sleep, and we're going to get back at like 5 a.m. tomorrow, and you tell us the invention. And so Al and I go home, and literally, Sung Ho is up all night, and he invented something. He gets in at 5 a.m. and he comes and we get there and I go, Sung Ho. So he goes, I think I invented something. He tells me what it is and he says this. And I go, oh, yeah, I think that'll work. But unfortunately, it was 3 bits that he had. I said, unfortunately, we need 4 bits. And long story short, what he had to do was cherry pick codes, 8 of the safest codes in 256. That would work best because these serial links, certain codes work better than others. And that's how he solved it. And I said, but unfortunately, for the scalability we need, I need 4 bits. And he goes, oh my gosh, I have to find 8 more codes. And so I literally told him, I said, okay, I'm going to code it up with constants. And I'm going to make up the 16 codes. I'm going to take your 8 that you have, and I'm going to make up the other 8. Al and I will design it all, verify it all works, functions. And then you better give us the real codes before Japan called, And sure enough, we did. We burned it in the FPGA. It worked, and we shipped it off, and we won.
yeah, I got a lot more respect for HTML boards now. I'm like, I probably should treat them better than I do. Like, oh.
So that invention is called TURC4, TMDS error reduction coding. 4 bits, and it's one of the patents that I'm second on. Sung Ho first. So I told him 4 bits.
Up all night.
I told him 4 bits.
That's good.
Oh, I love that swear.
So good.
So, oh gosh, I could just listen to you tell stories
Yeah, I told two others that were fun too in a talk I did for the IEEE a couple months ago, but that's the most fun.
Right. No, I do love that one. It reminds me kind of the Tetris story too, how it's just like so down to the wire, like these crazy things happening, and then you're like, what is this?
Anyway, so kind of transitioning now to Google. So you were the head of hardware for Google Nest and kind of their smart home stuff. So like as the head of hardware for that, like how did you approach innovation in such like a competitive marketplace?
Yeah, so I'm a competitive person. I love playing sports as a kid, and just I'm very competitive. And so the juices of competitive stuff in computers was just fun for me. So I actually got fired from Apple my second time. I actually got fired. I just delivered the second Apple TV, and there's all kinds of interesting personalities in a big company like Apple, especially at the upper echelons. I was director, and the vice president decided that I was no longer worthy after shipping that product, so he fired me. For all my pride, big tech is a very difficult place. And I used to tell people, actually, engineers, like, oh man, I want to be a director, I want to be a VP, I want to be the CEO. They look so awesome, look at all that money and blah, blah, blah. I said, do you like job security? Do you like having your job tomorrow? Because mine can be taken away any minute for whatever reason or no reason. And it actually happened. So I had left out. I resigned. You always resign.
Always design.
And that's how you actually then get the settlements so that it works out okay. And anybody who ever gets in that situation, I know a great lawyer. So I figured, let's go kick Apple's ass.
Yeah. Right?
Right?
Yeah, but come for me.
I'm going to go over to Google and go make them successful.
Yeah.
And I'd done this in a sense before. I went to Amazon after my startup died. Went there and built a first advanced development team. They just done Kindle 2, and we're building a lot of new hardware. And I more or less did projects for Jeff Bezos for 6 months of all his head projects, and then took one of them, which was the Fire TV, and that's where I invented the voice remote. Funny story there. We called it internally the Siri remote.
Where like before Siri was a thing?
Siri was a thing. Siri was invented at Apple, voice control. And we just figured Apple TV would have a Siri remote. Duh.
Yeah.
And so at Amazon, we were going to make this thing, and we were speeding like crazy, and we figured, oh my gosh, they're going to beat us. But if we're second, that's not too bad. And so we called it internally the Siri remote. We shipped it a year before that.
That's how that didn't even work.
Then I leave at Amazon. Apple hires me to ship the Siri remote at Apple. And then, after I got fired from Apple 4 years later, shipped 2 Apple TVs and so on, my best buddy, Tom Nader, who was my CTO at my startup, says to me, could you put an effing remote on that Chromecast? You know, the Chromecast from Google, $35, didn't have a remote, you used your phone. He goes, can you put an effing remote on that thing? And I said, Tom, that's what I do. So, Google TV now is remote. You've seen it. Those are all 3 of mine.
That's great.
Same design 3 times, paid me more each time.
Hey, there you go. Scalability, man.
Not the same design, of course.
No.
Because you're patent one,
Yeah.
you got to design it differently, better each time to not violate.
So now you know all your little tweaks and things to fix it, you know? You're done. Yeah. Should have just done self-destructed, like, you know, all of them as you like.
So you asked about innovation at Google and competitiveness. So literally, I get to Google and I say, you know, we're doing home automation stuff. Apple isn't even doing that. And frankly, Apple had become quite conservative when I was there. Second stint there, I was like, wow, this place is amazing. The greatest manufacturing company ever. Tim Cook really was amazing in bringing the company to just a machine, absolute machine. And I learned a ton in my 4 years there on how to relearn high volume manufacturing. It was wonderful. But they were conservative. Don't F it up.
Yeah.
You know, don't screw up what Steve Jobs did. He's passed away. Cook wants to, of course, continue and not fail. And so a lot of it, I always thought, I actually was surprised. It was playing not to lose. And we had all kinds of stuff at Apple back then, which I can't talk about. I really can't. Still can't. And we had all of it. All of it. And they wouldn't ship any of it. And then I went to Google, and they're hungry. And I'm like, let's ship this stuff. We shipped 25 products in 4 years. And it was really, I would say, the most satisfying thing in my career. I then managed 125 people. I had only managed up to 25 people before that. I'd say, really some of the greatest hardware shipment accomplishments I had there. And I was literally fueled by, I want to kick Apple's ass.
Yeah.
I mean, let's do something hard. And I'd tell others at Google, I'd say, all right, in 10 years, we're going to beat Apple. It's going to take us 10 years, though. They're like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. We can't beat Apple. I'm like, dudes, what are you working for? Like, you got to have something.
Right.
You got to have something to go after.
Yeah.
What gets you up in the morning to come here? If you want to say, I'm never going to beat Apple, you suck right now. When I got there, the place sucked. And it's like, how do you overcome that? You overcome that with faith. I mean, faith, you can have it in God, but you can also have it in all kinds of other things too, right? Unless you have a dream and a vision and something you're going after, you're gonna come in fourth place every year. And so that's a growth.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So with that, how is it that do you have a method of kind of like finding like, oh, that's a problem, I'm going to fix that? Or is it just your friends like, put the effing microphone in a remote? Okay, sure.
Some of them are that obvious, literally. And inside of a big company, you have to get by all the negators, I call them, the naysayers. So many people, bless their hearts, they run big organizations, they have important jobs, and so on. And yes, they don't want to screw up, but it makes you risk averse. Let's see, that nice house in Saratoga, I don't want to lose that. Maybe I should play it safe here and not try that thing that could fail and I could get fired for, because it happens. Even when I didn't fail at what I was doing, I still got fired, right?
Resigned. Not you resigned.
Hey, you know what? I like to tell it like it is.
Yeah.
Yes, officially I resigned. The guy fired.
Yeah.
He fired me, and that's the truth. He can. By the way, they fired him a year later.
Came around full circle.
But he's doing well at Microsoft.
So we have like a couple, maybe one or two more questions here on my side, and then we'll turn it over to y'all. I am really curious here about this one. But is there like one particular piece of technology that's now obsolete that you absolutely like love? And if you could reach back in history books and like be like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. So what's that piece?
Bump. Do any of you remember Bump? Yes, it's like NFC. It was like when you could bump your phones and we could exchange contacts. How many of you did some exchange of contacts right now and it was just ugly? It like took the whole 10 minutes to just get your damn phone number to something. Right?
Yeah.
Your email, right? Bump was literally, we bumped our phones, and you know what happened to that? Google acquired them, took the team, and put them on Google Photos. Now, Google Photos is amazing, and these guys did incredible work there. But they then just abandoned Bump. It was, patented and owned by Google, and they just killed it. And to this day, we still can't do it.
You can do that on iOS. Yeah, you can do it on iOS.
Can you now bump on iOS?
There's something called Dot where you can put your things on a little chip.
Yeah, you put it on a chip, but literally, can you take your iPhone and my Pixel phone?
With the new iOS, you can. Yeah.
Okay,
You do that with Android.
Fine.
Contacts.
So you do that with Androids? Isn't it just iOS to iOS?
Of course. That's my other pet peeve. I work for Apple.
QR code makes more sense for, well, no.
Ease of use. My
Less
mother,
friction.
she could bump. That's my whole point. Make it simple, stupid, easy. All of us engineers who say I could use a QR code, shame on you. Your mother can't. My mother, the lifelong wonderful journalist, could not do a QR code. all right? And that's where Steve Jobs was brilliant. Steve Jobs made that computer for the rest of them. He said the rest of us. He was kind of nerdy too. But literally, that's the brilliance of Apple, is you made it for my mom. And you as engineers, please make it for my mom. Deceased now, but I still make everything for my mom.
I love that. So last question on my end, any particular advice you'd give to people who are wanting to go into the tech space and do some type of either startup or something that they believe to be disruptive in the tech space? Anything you would say to that particular group of people?
Yes. When you have a good idea, you go all in. I think she made that up. Look, life is too short. You've got to go for it. Try it. Look, my startup, I did my own startup from 2005 to 2009. I raised $4.2 million from 56 angel investors because no VC would give me $1. Now, that company died in the 2008-2009 downturn. Good excuse, but it died. And if I could look back, there's one mistake probably that we made. That if I had done it differently, I'd be Sonos today. Literally, we did wireless surround sound in 2005, 2009, and we did it on the ultra-wideband radio instead of Wi-Fi. My biggest mistake. David Lee, the founder of Silicon Image, who had invested in my company, told me to, and I said no. That's the one regret I have.
That one and not
That
having
one and
Steve
not-
Jobs
not
call
having
you
Steve
out.
Jobs call me.
Yeah, equally.
The second one was really painful, though, because I
Yeah.
shut down my own company.
Yeah.
But anyway, best thing I ever did. Greatest experience. I like to tell it like it is. I got fired at Apple, and my startup failed. My wife goes, "Oh, it didn't fail, honey. You know, everyone, all the people there did really well, and blah blah blah. Look at you, blah blah blah. And the people who lost the money, they didn't need it anyway."
Funny being on the other side of that. Now you're like, God, no.
We've invested in 9 startups. We want them to succeed, don't we? Anyway, but she was trying to look, of course, at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The bigger picture, which was the relationships, the things that we grew there, the inventions we had, and sold the assets for $500,000. So I returned 1/8 of the investment to my investors. But I tell you, returning 1/8, closing the company with something that was of value, to this day, not one of those 56 angels hates me. And it actually helped me to, when things came fortunate enough for me, I wanted to do angel investing too, because it was so amazing to have these experienced people who had failed and tried and succeeded to tell you, it's hard. Let me tell you all the mistakes I made, so maybe you won't make half of them. And that's what personally, that's what I think angel investors, the best angel investors do. Look, the odds on angel investing are bad. It's not a good investment. It just isn't. You know, it's better. Look, you can get 5% from the treasury bills, T-bills right now, right?
Yep.
Okay. And the stock market, just buy QQQ, and my boys I told them buy QQQ, they're doing well.
Yep.
NASDAQ index. Anyway, but it's literally, this is, I guess, the thing of giving back. It's such a thrill. Look, I don't have it in me to do another startup. That's hard work. I'm 58 years old now. I'm not doing that anymore. But to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form by investing in these companies, and then what I'm amazed at is they actually take my phone call when I say, you know, I saw this thing and I think you might think about that. And it's kind of a privilege. It is a privilege to be involved in their businesses. Now, of course, I hope all of them do wildly successful, so I'll have some more money to invest in startups. That's the whole point. This is a fund that we've now maxed out how much we allocated to do. And so literally I need one of them to hit now or I can't invest anymore. And so I guess the point is that, you know, the learnings and the relationships that you build along that, this is what is the lasting memory. The success of Radiant Technologies was the people that I can call my friends. And to a person, they all felt part of the journey. And now as an angel investor, I feel a little bit part of these other companies' journeys.
Well, thank you so much, Jano, for imparting so much information to us and hanging out.